I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman, and we're here with Season 2, Episode 3 of Narcos Mexico. We are pumped, we are ready, and I don't know about you, but I am super excited to get started and talking about this episode. Joining me today is Rob.
Yes, I'm here and I'm ready to get through this because we got a lot to talk about with this episode.
Yeah, we definitely do. Be sure to stay tuned until the end because we also have two special segments. We've got our news and we've also got our real life Narcos segment, which you definitely don't want to miss. And then, so let's just dive right in and start talking about the episode.
Yes.
Yeah, let's touch. First of all, what were your overall thoughts on episode 3?
I really liked episode 3. I know I said I liked all of the episodes, but of course, because they're all amazing. But episode 3 throws you into this world and you don't know whether it's a dream sequence or whether it's real life or what. You don't know if it's a vision of the future. And the way it starts seems like really like a horror film, because we're walking through some woods and we're just like, okay, what's happening? You don't know if he's being stalked or he's stalking someone. So real uneasy the first few seconds of that episode.
It's funny, too, because we were watching this together just now before the show, and one of the things I remember you commenting on was that it seemed like a different show completely at first.
Yeah. It felt like a horror show. I'm like, okay, is a monster going to come out and eat this guy in the woods or what?
Yeah. I think that overall for me, I did enjoy episode 3, not as much as I enjoyed episode 2. I will say that up front. But it was still like, I was on the edge of my seat the entire, 55 minutes or however long it was. And I think what I appreciated is that we're finally, like, all these little strings we're starting to see with Felix and, how he's starting to, I don't know if this really happened in actual history, but it seems like now he's starting to come a little bit undone, but he doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, and I think because the walls are closing in, due to the Americans, like they were saying in the episode, they're putting the pieces together. But I still think Felix is even though he's coming undone, I still think he's a few steps ahead of the Americans.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how this is going to go, how people act when they get their backs up against the wall. So
yeah.
I think it'll be interesting how this pans out.
Yeah, so the big thing that we really started to see is that a couple different pieces here. So this dream sequence that you had mentioned, at least we think it's a dream sequence. I'm assuming because it was with Maria and she kept telling him to run. But then the thing that really told me this was definitely not real is the wavering of the sound and the dialogue. It was not very clear or crisp. In the sense that it felt very ethereal. So that also the fact that he was in this room, this interrogation room, it felt very abstract.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. Because that was one of the indicators for me, too, when I looked around the room and saw all the little instruments, especially the ones that were used to keep Kiki alive and torture him at the same time. So that's when I was like, okay, maybe this is actually a dream sequence. But prior to that, I didn't know what was happening. And
it's interesting because it all comes back to Kiki and how now Felix's decision to kill him, essentially, it's almost like it's coming back to bite him. We see later on, like we had a couple of things with Benjamin happening, but, kind of near the end with Felix, we saw that he ended up going to the Minister of Defense and was basically begging for his protection and been saying, hey, like, you need to live up to your end of the deal. I'm paying you enough.
Yeah.
So make sure that you protect me because there was just too much, too many things, as we'll see later with Ruben, Zuno, Arce. There are just a little bit too much happening to other people, in Felix's circle, enough to actually start potentially posing a threat to Felix.
Yeah, and now that you brought that up, there is whenever he was talking with the Minister of Defense, how he threatened to remove all of his money from the banks. He also explained how much more money his operation made than other major companies. So $15 billion, he threatens to take it out of his bank, out of the banks of Mexico, because he says it would crumble. The country would crumble. Which, I mean, he kind of had a point at that time. $15 billion is a lot to go from there to, let's say, like Switzerland or, well, this is in the 80s, so Panama maybe. But yeah, I mean, I think it puts the Minister of Defense in a bad position, but it kind of also puts Felix in a bad position, because now I think the government knows he can't be trusted. He never could have been trusted, but now I think it's really evident that we got a wild card on our hands.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, too, is that it was, again, like when we saw the scene between Pacho and Felix, in this case, it was another power dynamic switch. At first, it was definitely the Minister of Defense. I felt like he had the upper hand in the conversation, reminding him that Felix, first of all, should not be in Congress showing up this way, demanding things. That's number one. But then number two, the fact that the minister would say, I'm the future president, watch what you say. But then Felix turned the entire thing around and said, oh no, just remember who you're talking to, because I run this country, basically, me and the other drug lords. And it's crazy because money is really the driving power. And Felix even brings up Rome and how, like, for the millionth time, and how basically he's, not, well, the minister brings up Caesar, which I thought was funny, saying, you need to read that book and finish it and see what happened to him. But from Felix's point of view, it's just that, no, he is the one with the money, and so he's the power, really, not any government official.
Yes. And I like how this season, there's this recurring, I don't want to call it a theme, but it's a recurring scenes where there's a power dynamic and you just move back and forth between it. And it's a lot of tension in this. That's like rubber bandish, and there's always a good line that is said, whoever the writing this year is amazing. Like, there's a lot of good lines. Like, the turning point in this scene, between the Minister of Defense and him and Felix, was whenever he said, now go back into that hole that rats like you crawl out of. That's when it's like, okay, that's when the switch happens, and now Felix is,
He comes alive, and he shows us. That's what I've noticed with Felix, is that you have to push him to a certain level, and then he comes flying back at you and firing off, and then he almost always comes back with the upper hand.
Yeah.
And it's like he's holding back at first, and he always has that wild card that he plays that ends up earning him the power, and that he can walk away. And I think that, with Felix, though, it's interesting, because I think that he is more worried that he's going to let on. He's one of those people, like, you could probably really try to push him, and it would take a lot for him to actually show you that he was concerned. And I think that he is feeling the heat, but absolutely feeling the heat, as we've seen from the beginning of season 2 with episode 1 at the end, where he's sitting and contemplating after he receives that tiger. I feel like even then we were seeing that he's starting to get a little worried. The other thing is, with everything going on with Benjamin, Felix is trying, like, I think, one, he is maybe a little worried, but then two, I think that there's also this element of ignorance with him as well, and that he's worried to a certain level, but then he's also not as worried as he should be. With Benjamin and with the Sinaloans, I am very concerned that this union that Felix has worked so hard for has already begun to crumble.
Yeah, he keeps bringing up Rome, and uniting everyone. But yeah, I can see it kind of like blowing up soon. But to go back what you said with the Sinaloans and like Felix not being as concerned as he should be at times, or actually projecting that he's not concerned as he should be at times. I remember you said to me in earlier episodes, the Godfather, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff the Godfather-esque with the way that controlling emotions or not showing enough emotion when you need to, or controlling the people around him. Like that was one thing in the Godfather that was a theme that they kept keeping up. When or when not to do something, and that's what we're seeing here with Felix. And I completely agree with you said. With his status.
And Diego Luna, the actor who plays Felix, he actually reminds me of Al Pacino and the way that Al Pacino handled the role as the Godfather. It's very, like, to me, it's almost like they have the same kind of look. They have the same kind of, the way that they're acting these parts, the power. It feels very similar to me. And kind of also, since we're talking about Benjamin now too, just the fact that even the way that Felix handled the situation with Benjamin, which is, you need to remember who you are and and basically that you shouldn't be trying to make these demands of me, and like subtly hinting that that Benjamin was, walking a very thin line with him, but in the end, it wasn't that hard for Benjamin to get Felix to give him that tax. Yeah. So that now if the Sinaloans go through, they are going to have to pay 10%.
Right. But and what you're saying, it wasn't that hard for him to do that, Benjamin to get that. But it also wasn't that hard for Felix to, give him that, because I feel that's that tax is more of the purpose of like a pacifier, because he's complaining, he wanted more, he talked with him before about getting more, and Felix denied it. But now with this situation happening with the Sinaloans, okay, Felix has to do something, and Felix, I think, is really pragmatic in his approach, with giving him a 10%. I think Benjamin probably could have tried more, but I'm glad Felix gave him the 10, because 10's not too much, and it still can keep everybody happy, at least in terms of like the business.
I bet the Sinaloans are going to complain, though.
Oh, of course.
I feel like that's episode 4 is where we're headed, is that they are going to give Felix a call and say, what gives? Why are you doing this? And then it's going to turn into this huge mess, because we've been saying this word a lot, but wild card, they are definitely the wild card in this, union. Okay, so before we move on, because we have a lot to say with Breslin too, and Arce. So before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who is listening. We are not live right now, so obviously you would be watching this after the fact, but thank you for tuning in and watching this, and for making us the ESPN of TV talk. Every time you like, follow, subscribe, give us 5 stars on iTunes, because the other 4 don't work. You are helping us grow and learn, and you're just helping us to continue on, and you're allowing us to keep growing and keep doing what we're doing. So thank you all for being the best part of AfterBuzz, and for supporting us in everything that we do. And just thank you for being you. All right, so let's talk about everything going on with Breslin. Yeah. I'm going to have more to say about Kenny, a.k.a. Alex Knight is the actor who plays Kenny. I'll have more to say about him during the news segment, but just one thing is that we do see Breslin and his crew in Mexico.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are shaking trees and seeing what's going to fall out. I do think that what they're doing now teeter-totters on the edge of, I won't say illegal, but kind of frowned upon, but it is getting results. So it's kind of, if it isn't broke, don't try to fix it. But I think I think that this is when we go back to episode 2, him having to change the way he does things to get results. I think we saw more of a payoff of that here. But I still think that the way he's conducting himself now and getting these people, I think it's going to come back and bite him.
And Breslin's acting absolutely ruthlessly.
Yeah.
We find out, too, one very important thing, that Verdine is actually dead.
Yes.
I guess they dropped him off too late at the hospital because it didn't work out so well for him. But yeah, and it was funny because not funny in maybe a non-funny kind of way, but it was interesting, I should say. we spent, episode 1 and 2 focused on Verdine, and then in 3 it was just a throwaway line.
Right.
When Breslin was talking to the other guy, he's like, "Yep." I think it was the other guy who said he's in the morgue. Like,
Yeah.
by the way. So I found that interesting. That that was it. We're moving on now. And
Yeah.
but they're really like Breslin really is cracking down hard. And I think that it will come back to bite them the way that they're going about doing this. But like you said, they're getting results. So especially what we saw with Arce, and it was interesting because I'm using that word a lot today, but it was I appreciated how we did get to see a little bit with Arce before things led up to him being taken away and tricked into getting on the plane that brought him to Texas.
Yes, and another plan and payoff, with the cocaine and the girls, and that led to his demise eventually. Well, not demise, but as far as him leaving the country, I think if he would have stayed, inside, I think the Minister of Defense could have helped him, but due to his own, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not vanity. Yeah, vanity. Yeah, vanity. That, caused him to leave. And he could have stayed, but hanging out there doing the cocaine and just out of his mind, not thinking straight, and thinking, who am I, That's what got him.
And Breslin's been looking for a hint or some kind of proof that Felix is connected to this. And one thing that I noticed is that when Arce called into the phone line, he specifically, we know that Breslin was there and that he was monitoring the phones. Arce, he called into the lines and specifically requested to talk to Felix. So I think that now, that's obviously not proof per se, but it is pointing Breslin down that path of, okay, we're one step closer toward proving that Felix is the person involved in this.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a good hint with that call.
So we have everything going on there. On the other side, there's one more piece of this episode, and it had to do with Pablo Acosta, who actually returned to Mexico now, and Amado. And we had this whole thing with Fermin. I found it was almost poetic, the way that Fermin ended up dying and the way that Pablo prayed for him after his passing. And as we saw in the episode, this whole debate between a scoundrel and a crook. Or a bandit and a crook. It's interesting because it felt like we saw the actual difference in the way that we see these people go into battle.
Yeah, and there was the whole thing with honor that he kept bringing up, and went in there with honor. He went there to actually fight, but was prepared to speak with him as well. It just didn't end that way as soon as they drove up, shooting and whatnot. But the fact that he went up there with the intention to speak first before shooting, it speaks on the character, because bandits, they do what they need to do, and crooks, they do what they need to do, but in a different way. And one thing you said a few seconds ago about him praying for him whenever he died, the whole story when he explained to him, he saved him at first. He was a father figure to him, and that line that he was saying, you're not going to die over 12 ounces. You're not going to die here today over 12 ounces. That, that shows that, number one, he had remorse, but also the respect of looking out for someone who looked out for you, even in death. And I think that shows a little bit of Acosta's character, I like that.
And the fact that Acosta would go to his wife, Antonia, and give her the option to kill him.
Yeah.
And the fact that she wouldn't do it. It's just honor all around. And it really does speak to the fact that there are criminals who have no moral code, and then there are others who do. And it's this whole idea of the anti-hero in a way. People that you almost could root for in a different circumstance, who do things that make them a little bit, that put them on the more redeemable side. And then you have people like Felix or Verdine who just have crossed that line, and there's no saving them, and there's nothing they could do that would redeem their character.
Yes, and I like how we get to see two types of these types of people. We got the old school, and then we have the new school. The old school with honor, respect, and just a way of working things, and the new school who just does whatever they want to at random, And I like that. I like we get to see those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's almost like, even though this is the 80s, it's like we're seeing, like, the way that I view Felix is almost like he's the corporation.
Yes.
And it's a drug corporation. It's an illegal corporation, but he's the corporation, and then somebody like Pablo Acosta is more like, his own, like, small business owner who is going about things in his own way, and obviously in a different, still illegal, but with more of a moral code behind it, in a way. Yeah, in a way, but obviously not completely moral, but
yes,
compared to Felix.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So with the time that we have left, let's go ahead and dive into our special segments.
Ooh.
Yeah. First, we're going to talk about our real life narcos.
Yes. So tonight, our real life narcos. Ruben Zuno Arce. So he was in this episode. It was revealed that he was the owner of the home which Kiki was tortured and killed at. So here I have September 19th, 2012. He died in prison here in Coleman, Florida. He was 82, lived a long time, died of natural causes. He was serving a life sentence, for the assisting of killing Kiki and other drug-related crimes. I would say rest in peace, Ruben, but yeah. It was your time to go.
Yeah. I mean, 82 for somebody who lived that kind of life. Yeah, not too bad.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
So kids, don't be like Ruben, okay? Yeah. Don't be like him.
There are better paths in life.
Yes. Yes.
All right, let's jump to our news segment. So,
AfterBuzz TV News.
For this, okay, so I actually attended the Narcos Mexico Season 2 premiere, which was last week. Today we're recording this. It's February 12th. You're not going to see this episode until February 13th. So, yeah, last week when they had the Narcos Mexico Season 2 premiere, I met Diego Luna, and I only had the chance to ask him one question. That's if you're listening along on iTunes and you don't see the screen, that's a picture of me holding a mic out to Diego Luna. He was incredibly friendly, I will say that. And the question I asked him was, how do you feel about playing a role like Felix? And he said, I can't get him out of my head.
Ooh.
So that was interesting. Up on the screen now is Scoot McNairy. He plays Breslin, and I was able to talk to him, and he just had a lot to say about what we can expect from Breslin. He wasn't able to tell me much because because at this point the season 2 hadn't even come out yet. But yeah, he was very friendly too. They were all very friendly. Coming up next, we have Alex Knight, who plays Kenny. The big thing I took away from him is that he literally told me that he could relate to his character, and he didn't even have to do any kind of method acting because he physically got sick eating the food. And so he said he went through everything that his character went through, which makes me think that that's where we're headed with him, is that Kenny's gonna get sick somehow. And then so those were like the major people that I ended up interviewing, and it was amazing. And just, I guess my biggest takeaway was just how nice they were and how, like, down to earth every actor in the project is, especially Diego Luna, because you see him. I mean, if you don't know who he is, he was also in Star Wars Rogue One, but and he plays a hero in Star Wars, but seeing him in Narcos Mexico, I would think that he would be this really uptight, very serious man. And he just, when you talk to him, he just really looks at you and listens, and you can tell that like he's talking with you, not at you. So I just very, very positive experience, and really great guy.
Well, that's good. And seeing these actors play these roles, these bad, evil characters or crazy characters, and then you meet them in person, they're so soft-spoken and like, hey, it's like, whoa. But that's good. That's acting.
And yeah, exactly. And so for anybody who does want to see those interviews I did, you can go to AfterBuzz TV Red Carpets, and if you just search for Narcos Mexico premiere, it'll pop up on YouTube. So yeah, if you want to check that out, be sure to do it. I had about 6 interviews with the cast. There were 2 other people there too, doing the interviewing with me, and so they got some of the other cast. So yeah, be sure to check that out. With the 2 minutes we have left, let's dive into our predictions.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Rob, it is all you, unless you would like me to go first.
Okay, predictions. The Minister of Defense will come back in a big way, and he will interfere with this whole investigation. I'm not clear on how he will interfere, and I'm not clear to the degree of it, but he will interfere in some way to screw up Breslin in some way. And the next prediction I have is with Acosta. Yeah. Acosta is going to go back to... they're going back to Juarez, right? Yeah.
Juarez, yeah.
They're going to go back to Juarez, and something bad is going to happen to him. I don't think he's going to make it back home to his wife again.
I agree with you. They've mentioned it too much. It feels like an Easter egg at this point, that it's like, okay, nope, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. So I think something bad is going to happen there. I get the sense that something bad is going to... so I think that definitely Pablo Acosta is not, even if he does make it, I don't think his future bodes very well for him.
Right.
My other prediction is with Breslin. I don't know. I think that one of these times that he's going after people, that he's going to end up getting caught. I don't think it's going to be on the level of Kiki, but I do think that he's going to get into some trouble. The way that he's going about this, it could either be trouble legally from the U.S. end of things, or trouble because he gets caught and somebody tortures him. I still think that even though Verdeen ended up dying, I think that somebody connected to Verdeen that is out for blood and revenge is going to come and grab one of the interrogators.
Yes.
And then my last thought is that I almost feel like Amado is going to end up in trouble too, because of his connection to Acosta. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Until next time, Rob, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Rob Stilo. That's STEELO.
And you can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman, or on my author Instagram account at Rachel Radner Author. Until next episode, we will talk to you later. Have a great day, everybody.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.